everyone, D here. Welcome to our special live stream event talking about the first half of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., jumping into a few theories on what we think might have happened, and looking forward into what to expect in the back half of the season. With me today, I am very pleased to be joined with Mr. Don WIlli from a Don of Ice and Fire. How you doing, Don?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Darren, thank you for having me here to discuss one of my favorite shows, currently my favorite comic book show on any medium whatsoever. So, yeah, I am so glad to be discussing this topic, and I do believe that this is going to be a lot of fun. Wakanda forever.
Yes, I know. Wakanda forever. That was awesome. We won't get a chance to dive into this. Maybe at the end we'll get a chance to dive into a few extra Black Panther stuff. But also want to thank Learned at Hand, Frank Cardinal, everybody who has joined us into chat. Welcome. Very excited to have you here. So I think what we are going to do here is we're going to talk a little bit about the first half of the season, kind of get our impressions, how we think the show is moving, maybe reflect on a few moments that kind of stood out for us. We've got a little character work, but really I'd like to jump into a lot more of kind of theories and expectations, how we've seen the show move, what we think we're going to get moving forward, and how do we think we're going to relay all of these loose ends we have moving into the second half and sort of play with those sort of ideas. So let's jump off real first. Let me get your opinions. Don, what do you think of season 5 so far? How is it stacking up with the other seasons, and what's sort of really sticking with you for this adventure for the agents?
I mean, well, for one, I love how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., ever since the first season, since like the second half of the first season, every season they found ways to reinvent the show, to keep it fresh. And once they got into I guess the 3-act pods for the season, I think that is where they really hit their stride. So it so it's where, even with you being within a season, it's almost like mini seasons that add up to a greater narrative for the whole. And what stuck with me this season was that even though they were in a totally unfamiliar place, top to bottom, and facing circumstances to which they weren't prepared for, they still found a way to use the training that they've had over, however long their careers were in S.H.I.E.L.D., to find a way to survive. And also, ultimately, they're still doing the same job. And that's what I like about it. It's like, even though circumstances may change, even though the things that they have to do in order to maintain may change, these are still, this is still the core group of people that we've grown with over the past few seasons, even with, the minor tweaks that they've done to the team over the past couple of seasons. It's still, like it almost feels like family.
Oh yeah, completely agree. I think really they have. I mean, every season has progressed, has really gotten better. But yeah, the pods, especially when they hit by season 4, was, I think, totally their stride moment by breaking it up into those small, short, mini adventures. It really allowed the show to focus on telling those stories and not giving us any filler episodes. In the first half, while they were sort of finding out your feet, we had some filler episodes, some episodes that were good or bad and started some ideas and then sort of dropped it off. After the whole Winter Soldier event and then moving into second season, they really started tightening their storytelling, I think, really well. And now it's that perfect stride of really just focusing on the concepts and telling the stories And on top of that, being able to link them together. I mean, when last season where they had everything open up with Ghost Rider and the Darkhold, and then how the Darkhold allowed the LMD, allowed Ada to really flourish and establish the whole LMD arc. And then when we moved into the framework, it ended up bringing the Darkhold back in order to bring her back into life, and thus bringing Ghost Rider back to sort of wrap things up. It was a perfect idea of setting up these small stories, but then keeping them put together in a larger whole. And then I think you also hit a good point with them this season kind of being on their own. I think that's always where the team has done its best. Even after we lost all of, Big Shield, and they were the small ragtag group led by Coulson just trying to do things in the shadows. I think removing them from their support mechanisms always allows them to flourish a little bit more. It gets the character focus a lot more interesting and allows them to improvise, as opposed to what we had in some of the earlier stuff is just call in the technology and have that, come in and fix things for them, as opposed to, again, really trying to figure out on their own. So I think that's where they really hit their stride in with this season.
Yeah, and again, I think that like what you were saying about how they wrap things up and they made things flow into the next. Remember the last episode of last season, it was left off on a cliffhanger that immediately picked up with the beginning of this season. And so it's like, even though it is a different story, it's still part of the same story. And I think that in this modern era of television where you have long-term narratives, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., especially for the comic book superhero genre, is one of the few that is maintained that even though the stories are different, and there are different narratives, everything can still be kind of traced through a particular thread. So it's not like when you pick up with the next season, it's going to be this jarring thing, to where it's like, oh, well, this thing happened last season and this feels different. It's like, no, it still feels the same, and think about it. This season, they're facing against the Kree, and the Kree have been around since season 1. We didn't get to see, a big to do with them. They popped up here and there for an episode or two, but now here you have 10 episodes where it's like, okay, we're dealing with the Kree, and you're dealing with the Kree on their terms. This is not a thing where the Kree pop in and they might be unfamiliar with the landscape. This is a time when the Kree are actually in control of the situation, and the agents have to find a way to galvanize people to be able to take back what was rightfully theirs to begin with. And then also they brought in Gravitonium, which that was one small gripe that I've had with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that they dropped that story from season 1 with the trying to capture the escaped prisoners that broke out after the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the rise of Hydra, because I was hoping to see Graviton, but honestly speaking, Graviton is such a powerful character that the agent shouldn't be able to take him down. Graviton should be an Avengers enemy, and it's funny because I started rewatching Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes was a fantastic depiction of the Avengers in terms of cartoons. And Graviton, I was sitting up here like, if they would have had this particular version of Graviton on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it might have ended 3 seasons ago, because he would have wiped them all out, and they wouldn't have put the Avengers in the show to save them.
Oh yeah, well, it's interesting. I was actually doing a lot of reading up on Graviton because that is one of those strings, and obviously, I think that's the great thing about this season. It's one of those moments that really kind of piqued my real interest. I mean, not that everything this in this show doesn't really get me excited, but when we had the discovery of the gravitonium, that can only refer back to Graviton, which did feel like one of those drop storylines from way back in season one. We had who was it? Ian Hart, who playing Franklin Hall there, just showing up, and I think there was an expectation that was going to be a bigger storyline. I think even when we had Joss, there was a little discussion about with Jed Whedon about once Josh had sort of left, he was the impetus that was sort of linking things together. There was the idea is, are we going to get Graviton to be a link between Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers? Because this should be a bad guy that's Avengers level to deal with. And it always felt like that was sort of a drop storyline. So I think what we're doing this season, we were definitely going to get into this a little bit more. I think this is that opportunity to really start to bring some of those dropped ideas forward. And I think we're really playing that into a lot for this season. But before we get into all of those theories and ideas, because I got lots of notes on things I'd like to chat about, specifically around Graviton and such. Let's talk a little bit briefly about some of the characters that we met this season, and I'll start things off with always the more interesting person, the bad guy, and in this case, Cassius, who is the Kree, and that's one of the great things that I love about the show, diving into these really bigger concepts. It's not just what's going on Earth. Jumping forward in time, dealing with the Kree, like you said, that is a huge step, and that's really something that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is taking to the forefront of really dealing with a lot of these alien races and those interactions with them. And I thought Cassius was excellent. And the first episode, in the first couple episodes, I have to say, I think Orientation 1 and 2, I wasn't quite sure how we were going to take Cassius. He was different. He felt that kind of soft-spoken, and then would blow up into bits of anger. And I wasn't quite sure how he was going to establish as the villain. Was he going to be the big bad, or was he going to be like the early, villain that they deal with, and then they push him aside, and there's someone a lot more mean, a lot bigger for them to deal with. But by the time we got into episode 3, I think that really was the point where he stepped into his own, where they gave him enough scenery, they gave him enough stuff, and he had spent those first 2 episodes playing with the character, that he really stepped into it, where that quietness became vicious. It became uneasing. And then, of course, the explosive anger was something that was disturbing, but so much that he was able to keep things close to his chest and be threatening without being over the top. His ability to kind of chew the scenery, I thought, became just the quintessential point for him. So that in the end, when he does finally have his big blow up and reactions to the team, it makes it so much more menacing. But what did you think of Cassius and our villains?
Okay, so as far as Cassius is concerned, to me, he reminded me of Joffrey. If Joffrey learned anything about subtlety, like Joffrey Baratheon, if you guys have never watched Game of Thrones, is a character who winds up becoming a very powerful individual, and because he is kind of untamed in the way that he has unchecked power. And because he has this unchecked power, instead of him saying, okay, how can I use this to gain people to my side and intimidate people when I have to, he's just the dude that's like, oh, yeah, you've made me upset. I'm going to kill you in brutal fashion. And the difference with him and Cassius is, look, Cassius didn't want to be there. He's trying to find a way out. And his whole thing is, look, I need to keep this population under control because I do know that the population has the numbers. And so he's devised ways in order to keep the people at bay and almost thankful for his cruelty to a certain extent. He's not like when I think of classic TV show villains, another character that comes to mind is Gul Dukat, right? Where Gul Dukat thought he was altruistic, but truly he was just a madman, right? Whereas Cassius doesn't consider himself to be altruistic at all. He's like, I'm here. I didn't want to be here. I'm making the best of a bad situation. And his reserved nature is like, this is him putting on the brave face. Where it's like, yeah, when he has those blow ups, it's his frustration with him being in a place that he never wanted to be in the first place, and the fact that his father and his older brother kind of look at him as a disgrace, and he's just like, look, I want to be worthy of the family name, but you guys aren't giving me a shot. You guys are treating me like I'm some coward. And the thing that I like is, when he got his chance, like when he's basically at his wit's end, he's just like, all right, fuck it. You know what? You gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go. And I'm gonna do what I gotta do so I can finally not have to live with this stigma anymore. And that was his thing.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, and I think that was a great change for us as the audience to see is when we actually make Cassius a sympathetic character. When we see him compared to his brother and his father and how they're acting and going, oh my God, here's a guy that got thrown in a situation he didn't want, basically sent off to die, yelled at because he didn't die, and then gets exiled out on this planet. I mean, for a moment we do. And I think that's always a good point with any villain, is to make them relatable. The minimum we can make them sympathetic, even for a moment, even just a small idea to go, oh my God, this horrible person is really, he's been kind of screwed over himself. And this is just him responding to it, I think is always kind of the best way to make a villain relatable. And therefore make them much more interesting compared with all of our protagonists. All right. What about Sonara, his little right hand? I love the development with her as well, because we got to see, especially in that story where we hear about their history, that she, there was questions with her relationship with him. Were, was there, was it just, master and servant? Was she an equal with him? Did he care about her? Was she, was he just using her? And I think to sort of see how Sonara was the muscle of the relationship and he was the planner, and that she was working to protect him and pulled him out of that, deadly situation, and that he does have sort of a commitment to her. And in fact, when she dies, he loses it. I mean, he goes completely bonkers and obsessive about that. So, I mean, I love the sort of relationship that they had with him. Not to mention with those magical Kree flying balls of death. She was quite impressive to see combat-wise.
Yeah, listen, Sonara was an interesting character because for the first few episodes, it was like, can she even talk? Because we know that the Kree had that technology that they put the little mercury ball in your ear, and you don't speak and you only hear what whoever is the master of that particular device talks to you. So it was interesting to see that, here you have someone who's definitely a skilled warrior who was following Cassius's orders, and it was just like he would tell her something to do, she would never say anything. She would just kind of have this smirk on her face and then go do it. Or she, like she would have, like, the actress did a phenomenal job because she said so much with her face without speaking a word. And it was like, okay, you could kind of read what she was thinking. And I was kind of like, is she mute? I mean, is that her deal? She's mute. Is she an android? Is she actually a person? Like, what is the deal with her? And later on they actually gave her some speaking lines, and her versus Daisy, her versus May, obviously spectacular fights. I have to say that, aside from the couple of hallway scenes in Daredevil season 1 and 2, and a couple of the things with Luke Cage, there is no better fight choreography than Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And this season again proved it. Sonara, even with the balls of death that she had, it was like when she wasn't using those, when it was just a hand-to-hand situation, her versus Daisy, phenomenal hand-to-hand fight. Her versus May, and I know May was injured, but it was still a great hand-to-hand fight. Her versus Daisy inside the not Tumblr. What would they call that thing? The troller.
Right. The troll.
Was it inside the troller or was it inside the Zephyr? No, that was inside the Zephyr.
Oh, the big Sonara versus Quake fight. Yeah, that was inside the Zephyr.
Yeah, inside the Zephyr. Phenomenal fight. And so that's a character who I wish could stay around longer, and judging by the way that they have those loops, I think we could see her and Cassius again, because Cassius did say that he was around from the beginning, and when the agents show up, it's 80 years in the future. So, I mean, imagine, if we get to see an earlier, younger version of Sonara and Cassius, either in this next pod or in the final wrap up for the season. That would be awesome.
Oh, I think it's entirely likely, because we are going to have Cassius's father showing up, as we know, is sort of the Kree invasion point. But we kind of keep moving in that direction, and it'll be interesting to talk about some of the actual characters. Flint, which I found being interesting. I loved having him show up. All of the sort of protagonists, Deke's characterization. We keep kind of hitting it, and I've got a few points here in the chat that are asking questions. First off, yes, Learned Hand. World run by Hydra or one by the Kree, which would we prefer? Neither. I think it's good that we don't have either of those. But let's see. Let's kind of dive into some of these ideas of what we have moving forward, because when we get a few hints on what we can expect in the back half of the season, at least from the Kree standpoint, we get a few little things. We had the story is being told, there was a flash of light, then aliens showed up, then Daisy came, and there was a fight, and then the world ended. We get a few kind of ideas from the human standpoint. Cassius talked a little bit more about his father being part of a consortium, a confederacy, as it were, that saw Earth as this potential jewel out in space that Nobody else in the Kree believed in, thought that they should go after. And I'm wondering if this is tying back into the Inhumans. So we should be expecting Cassius' father to show up. Whether or not we will see Cassius himself with Sonara, I'm not sure. I think that would be sort of cool to see that. However, Cassius only knew a couple of the agents. He recognized Yo-Yo for obvious reasons. He was holding and torturing her. But Mackie didn't recognize, nor really anybody else when he first saw them. So I'm not sure how much he was around during that initial invasion. But let me get over to where I'm looking at things here. But yeah, so I think we're definitely going to see the Kree coming up. And as you were talking about seeing of the consequences that we have for past seasons, that's what really kind of interests me the most, because the team is going to be walking right back into where they were at the end of season 4, which is S.H.I.E.L.D. has been dismantled again. Daisy is blamed for what they believe is to Jeffrey Mace's death. Plus, we have her attacking Talbot. We didn't see Talbot in any of the flashback sequences from Rewind, so I'm not sure if he is in a coma or just out of it, and General Hale is running things. And then we have the whole question of what is the deal with General Hale? She seemed military, and yet shooting people in the head when they are not successful in retrieving the mission does feel more like a Hydra thing. So are they going to be bringing Hydra back? Or is this an extension off of the LMD storyline? So I don't know. What are you thinking about looking into the back half? And then we'll jump into a few more of the bit specifics that I have.
Man, well, for one, as far as Talbot is concerned, I think now that we have Adrian Pastor, I think it's Pazder, how you pronounce his last name. He's on Supergirl now, playing not Maxwell Lord. He's playing some other guy on Supergirl. So I think that's probably why we don't have Talbot. I think he does much better job as Talbot than the villain he's playing on Supergirl. But that's just look. I'm Marvel bias, but as far as General Hale, I mean, obviously there's something ridiculously sinister about that character. It is what is that thing about her? That is the question. Could it possibly be connected to Coulson's illness? Could it be a leftover remnant of the LMD? Could it be a leftover remnant of Hydra? I mean, listen, it was said in the chat a little while ago. I mean, this season is missing Hydra. How do you have S.H.I.E.L.D. without it? And it's definitely one of those things where, man, it's hard to tell where they're gonna go because there is so much for them to pull from. And we don't know whether or not this is going to be the final season. It seems as though Disney specifically is doing everything they can to keep Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on TV for a specified amount of time. And it appears, it could be, I could be wrong, but it appears that they do want them to run through to Infinity War Part 2 or whatever Avengers 4 is going to be called. It seems like they want them to last at least that long and possibly end it there, which would give them, I believe, about 7 seasons, if I'm correct on that. So the question remains, from the past storylines that they have yet to wrap up, or things that are just fan favorites, what could they pull back into today, and where do some of these characters actually fit? Because when we when we got introduced to oh man, why am I forgetting his Enoch? When we got introduced to Enoch, we had absolutely no idea what he was about at all. Then finding out he's a thousands year old android. We're still trying to figure, because the agents still don't 100% know why he sent them to the future. Like that's one thing we're still trying to figure out, is why were they sent to the future. Obviously, General Hale knows something about damn it, what the hell is that little girl's name?
Robin.
Yeah. I knew it was something with an R. I'm like, it's not Rose. Rose was the one from Star Wars. So she knows something about Robin because she shot the two people in the head when they came back with the pictures. Because I don't think she killed them for failing to capture Enoch or whoever, or Fitz. I think that she knows something about Robin and possibly other Inhumans that she is trying to hide. She knows something about those pictures, and there's a story in those pictures that she doesn't want told.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and yeah, I
think you went mute there for a sec. Wait, you're still mute. Yeah, you might have to re-plug in. Hold on, folks. We are having technical difficulties. We shall return momentarily. Until then, watch me dance. Oh, man. Shout out to everyone in the chat right now. Ricky Hunt, Mark L., Gerald Downing, C. Silva. Oh, man. See, yeah, we haven't seen Deathlock. Wait, a MODOK? I don't remember MODOK being on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I could totally be wrong about that. I don't even know if you guys can hear me at all. Still waiting to see Robbie Reyes. Let's see here. Hive. Definitely Hive. Yeah, for some reason you are still on mute. I don't know what happened. You might have to go to your settings on Google Hangouts and check them. I'm not sure if you can hear me at all. Okay. Yeah, it's funny. So the chat can hear me. I can see Darren, but cannot hear Darren. This is, damn you. See, this is a Hydra conspiracy. Hydra doesn't want us giving all this praise to S.H.I.E.L.D. That's what it is. It's either that or Thanos, or it could be DC. DC doesn't want us giving all this praise to Marvel right now. This is Marvel Life. See what it is. Daredevil, Black Panther. We got Darren with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. t-shirt on. And apparently somebody at DC is not liking that right now. Man. Yeah, listen, let's see here. When they detached the Superior's head, I think he became MODOK. Could be. Could be. Yeah, Ricky, I would love to see Trip and Grant Ward. Oh man. Trip and Grant Ward. Listen, when they had them in the framework, listen, you know what I was hoping to happen? Because they definitely hinted. Oh wait, D, take yourself off mute. Hold on. Somehow you have muted yourself. But yeah, they hinted at possibly bringing back bringing back people from the framework. And when they did that with Ada, I was like, we could get Grant Ward back. We could have a non-Hydra Grant Ward join the team. We could get Trip back, and we never did. All right, so Mark L is asking, who is my favorite character this season as Darren deals with his technical difficulties. Google Hangouts is not cooperating today at all. My favorite character this season. Man, my favorite character this season.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Finally, yes, yes, we can finally hear you.
Thank you. Sorry, I moved to disconnect my mic and it would not reconnect. So thank you everyone for your patience with that. When people rewatch this is going to be a real interesting section, I am sure. Thank you everyone for hanging out with all of my technical errors.
Wait, hold on. I gotta answer Mark L's.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Real quick. Favorite character this season. Oh man. Favorite character this season. Yo, this is a hard one. This is a hard one. Damn it. I don't know, Darren. Who's your favorite character this season? I'm torn on this one.
No, that's a fair one. There are some interesting ones. Really, I mean, as a villain, I really like. I was saying before, I really like what Cassius stepped into. I wasn't sure in the beginning when we were first introduced to him. I really thought as the season went on, as that first arc went on, he really inhabited the character nicely. Deke also, I think, had a really interesting character arc in this, and he is one of those people that I am looking forward to seeing pop back. We already know there. If you guys have seen any of the promotional pictures, we know that he is coming. That he is in the present, coming up. My theory of how that happened is, I think, just when Enoch exploded, I think whatever remnant, that small remnant of the monolith that was there, kind of liquefied and went over him, and that opened the portal to send him back. That's kind of my guess. But he is somebody that we're going to be seeing forward, and I kind of liked how we started with we weren't sure whose side was he on. Was he selfish? Was he really a believer? And his relationship with Daisy, I thought, was a really interesting arc, where at the end he was very supportive of who she was and the choices that she needed to make, and that she did need to go back and she did need to save the world, however much he had kind of despised her before. So I really liked what Deke did. Flint was interesting, but we didn't really spend a lot of time with him. Kind of both him and Tess, they were good supporting characters, but I don't think they really carried any major momentum along with them. So that's sort of ranking why I like Cassius as the villain. Sonar was fun. But Deke, I think, had the most interesting kind of arc through the first half of this season.
You know what? I'm going to say my favorite character, and this is someone who has grown on me, who I wasn't necessarily a fan of when he first arrived on the series. And that is Mac. Mac, over the past couple of seasons, has actually grown to be one of my favorite characters. And I think he is my favorite character this season, and I'll tell you why. Because he is the one guy who, he's the guy that, whenever you see somebody black comment on what they wouldn't do in a horror film, he actually says that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I like the fact that they actually wrote it, like like earlier in the season, when they're talking about splitting up, when they first get, they first get out of the monolith and they split up, or they're talking about splitting up. He was like, "What? No, don't. Haven't you seen what happens in horror movies? And you all know who dies first."
No, that was the great thing about Mac, and I agree. I think Mac is in some way, he is our entry into the team. Because they did the same thing last season. We were talking about robots, when he was talking about the LMDs. Is like, haven't you ever seen a robot movie? You know what happens. You never give them intelligence. And his referrals to pop culture constantly, I think, is sort of that best idea. Like, he is the one person, kind of like Guy in the Galaxy Quest. It's like, if you guys watch the show, you guys have any idea of what normally happens in these circumstances? Don't make those choices. So yeah, I love how Mac has developed over the past few seasons. Also,
Yeah. Now I'll be honest with you. When he first arrived in season 2, with that whole the real show, I was like, oh god. Will you stop saying that? Please stop saying that. But he grew on me. Framework Mac was not my favorite Mac. And I get it. He's talked about his daughter, losing his daughter, so having to lose her twice has got to be horrifying. But I think that they rebounded him in a great way this season. He's also the moral compass for the team. Like, he does the hard work. He doesn't necessarily like doing the dirty work. Because remember, Mac, even though he was a part of S.H.I.E.L.D., like Fitzsimmons, he wasn't a spy. Coulson, May, Daisy later on, those were spies. And Yo-Yo kind of fell into that too, even though she came from more of the guerrilla fighter, revolutionary background. Mac is the guy who really goes to the rest of the team when they're thinking about doing something that would compromise who they are morally, and is just like, no, we don't do that. That's why we're not the bad guys, because we don't do these kinds of things. And it was interesting to see when Yo-Yo had set up what was that one guy? She set up the guy with the gun, and like Mac figured out, like, oh, you planted that gun on him, and like the look that he gave her, like, oh, you just did that. You're just gonna do that, huh? That was pretty interesting because, look, we can tell that Mac and Yo-Yo definitely, I don't know if they like love each other. Like, they don't love each other in the way that Fitz and Simmons do. Fitz and Simmons are on a, like that. That's one of those, like, everyone wishes they could have that kind of love for another human being. I don't think Mac and Yo-Yo are there yet. And I think, unfortunately, due to some of their morality conflicts, they might never get there. But I do think if one of the other was to die, I mean, like, we saw how Mac reacted when he saw the mutilated future Yo-Yo get killed, and it's they were alluding to Mac being killed and that kind of breaking Yo-Yo to a certain extent. So, like I said, Mac has grown to be a favorite character of mine. He's my favorite character this season so far, and I can't wait to see what they do with him. Hopefully they don't kill him off. Please don't kill off the one black guy. Please.
No, you can't. They already did that to Trip. They can't kill Mac. Mac has to stay on the group. There's no question about that. All right. Let's see. Seeing a few questions in the chat asking about Absorbing Man. Yes, Absorbing Man is coming back. I think he'd probably be our connection in with Talbot. Whether he's going to work with the team or against them, I'm not sure. I think that all depends on how we find out what General Hale's connection is with Talbot in that sense. Let's see. I saw something else. Ghost Rider. Yes, we know that we're going to see. Well, I believe that he's going to come back. The 100th episode. Okay, when we come back for episode 99. The 100th episode is the following week on the 9th. And that is the one where we know we're going to finally find out what actually the deal with Ghost Rider is that's been affecting Coulson. And let's actually kind of use that to dive into the whole Coulson idea. We learned at the end of the past pod that Coulson was poisoned in some manner. And there's a few different ideas. I've been kind of rewatching the episodes a few times and looking at a few kind of ideas that people have posited over the internet. And it seems to come down, there's a few theories. The first one is the most direct. The blade that Ty was using to attack him and Daisy was poisoned in some manner. And that's what's affecting. And when he got sliced, it went into him. And he's got some sort of Kree poison in him. Daisy, however, was sliced also, and she hasn't seemed to react. So, does it just affect regular humans and not inhumans? Possibly, but that seems to be less. We can start moving backwards and seeing, is this something that Phil has already had and carries over from last season? Is it a connection? Is it something from the Darkhold when he was exposed to that, or to the ghost, or when he was brought over into the dark dimension there for that short period of time? Is that something that's connected him? And that's what Robbie Reyes was referring to in that last conversation with Coulson. You know why he left you? Yes. Are you going to tell them? No, I will tell them, and later at some point. So I don't think that this is actually connected to Ghost Rider necessarily particularly. I don't think this, because the deal, when we look at Ghost Rider, the deal that we had there is we're expecting that this is a cost of him joining up with Ghost Rider. However, Ghost Rider took over Mac's body, and Mac doesn't seem to have had any fallout. The deal that Coulson made with Ghost Rider was to help Ghost Rider fulfill his mission to stop Ada. So I don't know why he would affect him, or why there would be some kind of consequence on Phil's standpoint for doing that. In some ways, he seemed to be doing Ghost Rider a favor by sort of working together with him. So I'm not really sure what if there's a negative consequence of that deal coming out of that sense. And the last sort of idea that I saw was that this could be all the way back to the Avengers, because of where it is. Is that where Loki's staff went through him? And is this some consequence, either a long-standing thing of the Tahiti project failing, though with Cassius talking with Yo-Yo and using the blood and being able to heal her, the old Yo-Yo, over so many years, that didn't really seem to be a case. That wasn't really brought up at any point. Or is it some consequence of you're not supposed to be alive, and therefore at some point death is going to come up with you? So we've got sort of a few different theories. Again, we'll find out what it is in a couple of episodes, but I think this might kind of shape why Coulson, because again, we have to let Coulson die to save the Earth. That's what Yo-Yo was saying. So what is it that they have to do in order to try and save Coulson that could allow them to finish getting this loop back?
You know what? I'm not sure. And, you know, I'm glad that you brought up the Tahiti project, because that was kind of another dropped storyline, if you think about it. Because if you remember, The place where they showed up, it was specifically said that it was not a Shield facility, and we never got any answer as to who funded or ran that place. It was literally, oh, they found out that this was the place where Coulson was revived. They went there, they faced some soldiers. They had absolutely no idea who those guys were. And before they could get any answers, the place was leveled. And that was pretty much, where it ended. But the thing that we do know that we got out of there was that that's where they had Kree corpses, and that's kind of what they used to experiment and bring Coulson back with. So if this is somehow a long-term side effect of the Tahiti project, because Jed Whedon did say that they're going to be bringing back old threads. That would be interesting to see if it is part of the Tahiti project. If they gave us answers, final answers to the questions of how that happened and what the long term side effects were of bringing this man back from the dead with what seemed at the time not only to be alien DNA but alien technology as well.
Yeah. Well, they did kind of open that up, because when they went into season 2 and the whole thing with the alien writing, we did find out that this was sort of a secret Shield thing that Fury had set up and put Coulson in charge of, to find a way to save an Avenger if they had fallen. So, I think they had kind of blown that. I think they might have even referred back to finding the Kree body as something connected with the Agent Carter, one of her earlier adventures. I sort of remember with Whitehall, when they had discovered way back when Whitehall was first arrested. I think that's when they had found the alien body and then it sort of experiment on. So they had sort of played with that, I think in some points, but it does give a lot of storylines that they have to pull back. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're going to have, Graviton himself sort of brought back, is I think we do have the chance to sort of deal up with these old storylines. Few people in chat have been asking about, do we expect a season 6? And I have to agree with you. Yes, I do expect a season 6, specifically because if they do want to end this show, it would make it much more sense to end it around Avengers 4 as opposed to this season right now. I think at least that gives that whole first 3 phases and links it all together. And that way, if in Avengers 4, you do sort of a rewrite and sort of warp the reality and reboot things in some sense, that would seem to be kind of the perfect time to finish up the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline. I hope not. I love this show. I think they do better every season. I think they have great character arcs. Someone else was mentioning about the May story arc. I love the May story arc. I love how much they have given her over several seasons, going from the quiet badass to finding out why she became such that quiet badass, to discovering the emotional kind of youthfulness that she had that started that connection in with Phil, and then more a point what they've worked with last season and this season, the whole kind of Felinda ship, where we have this natural evolving relationship between these two characters. And then we add on top of that this season the whole mother idea, which it seems everybody else can kind of recognize in. Daisy kind of sees it. Let's face it, May and Phil are kind of like Daisy's adopted mother and father in many ways, how we have that kind of family dynamic. But how they seem to see in her all of those maternal potentials and instincts that she couldn't recognize herself until finding out this relationship that they had with Robin. So I have loved what they have done with May. I love what they have done with all these character arcs, and I think that's the strength of the writing, because the whole Phil and May connection, that was never designed. That was a natural evolution of just these two characters interacting and the actors inhabiting those characters and the chemistry that naturally developed between them. I think that's one of the great things about this show, is how much they're able to recognize the natural things that are moving and integrate that into the storyline. Even, for instance, with Fitz, they started the season earlier than they were planning to. If you remember, it wasn't supposed to start till January. They moved it up into the beginning of December, which means they'd start shooting earlier. Ian DeCastecker was committed to a film. He couldn't be there at the beginning. So what did the writers do? Fine, you're off the list. We'll stick you around for a little bit. And then when you come back, we'll give you a whole episode to prove your own badassness and integrate you right back into the storyline. With May, Ming Na got wounded at the end of last season. They managed to pull it through, but during one of the fights, she damaged her ACL and she had to have surgery. How do they do that? They wound her leg at the beginning when she gets transported into the future. Now you don't have to worry about all of the May combat sequences, but because she's trained Daisy, they can take all of those fights and move it over. So Daisy is now the badass fighter and May's kind of the backup. So how the writers have been able to adjust in with all of these circumstances, I think really shows both the strength of the writers and the characters and the world that they have sort of created for them to inhabit. And I think that's one of the just consistently strong points that they have for the show, which is why I don't think they're going to let Coulson die, because they do have to have a season 6 at least, and you can't have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. without Phil Coulson. Am I right?
You are 100% correct, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was supposed to be the showcase for Phil Coulson. You got to think about it. Phil Coulson was a character who was a supporting character in Iron Man 1, who was literally just supposed to be the dude to help drop in an Easter egg about S.H.I.E.L.D. That was all his job was. And he got so popular that they were like, you know what? We don't need to make Sam Jackson the guy who goes around and recruits the Avengers. We can make Phil Coulson that guy. Yes, Samuel Jackson can add a bit of gravitas to it if need be, but no, Phil Coulson, like, this is a guy who was made up just to be a side character in one movie, and got springboarded into being this thing so much that they created Phil Coulson for the comic books as well. And then, after his death in Avengers, it was like, okay, Marvel wanted to spin off things into the TV universe, so it wouldn't just be the movies, it would be something that people could get into that would essentially hold them over, in between movies. And it was like, okay, well, we want to do the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously, Samuel L. Jackson every week as Nick Fury wasn't going to work. You couldn't get oh man, I forgot Maria Hill. What's her name? That plays Maria Hill. Colby Smulders, because she was still doing How I Met Your Mother, so they couldn't get those two every week. But Phil Coulson was the guy still, and it's like, all right, we can bring him back. We'll keep it under wraps. I mean, it is a spy organization, so you bring back Phil Coulson, you make this the showcase. He can be the point man for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And, he's our guy. He is our link to the movies that'll still be on TV every week. So you can't like unless you found a way to transition uh um someone else into the leadership role. And don't get me wrong, I think they have been transitioning Daisy into a leadership role, but honestly speaking, she's still looked at as kid sister, I think, by most fans. You know, I still think even though Daisy is a very, very capable and powerful character in her own right. And she is someone who, at first, I was shaky on during the first season. Um, but you know, once they kind of found a way to develop her, I was like, you know what, absolutely love this character. But I think that uh, you need Phil Coulson because you need someone that the rest of the team is going to look to for that leadership role. Remember, May could do it, but May doesn't want to be the leader. Coulson never necessarily wanted to be the leader either, but you know, when it was thrust upon him, he took it in stride and was able to really hold things together. Even when Jeffrey Mace was made, you know, the director of Shield, everyone knew it was like, okay, yeah, you're the face, but really, Coulson is still the guy. And you know that was, remember, if you remember from a couple of seasons ago, that was the thing. It was like, hey, I'm supposed to be in charge of Shield here. Why is everyone still going to you? It's like, come on, dude. They're coming to me because I am Phil Coulson and you are Jeffrey Mace. So, you know, I think that at this particular point in time, especially if you're only going to do 2 more seasons, you know, unless and damn it, I've been calling him Phil Coulson so much, I forget what his real name is.
It's Clark Gregg. Yeah.
Yes. Unless Clark Gregg really is done with it and he pulls a Victor Garber on you and is like, I want to go back to Broadway. Unless he really is just like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. No, you keep him around. You let him see the thing out. Let Coulson ride off into the sunset after season 7. And, you know, and again, I think that as long as they can keep up the level of storytelling that they've been doing, I think that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., when it's all said and done, could possibly go down as the greatest comic book based TV show in history. It could be there. I mean, listen, it's no disrespect to any of the other shows out there, but I think that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the only show that is either maintained or has raised or gained in quality over its run.
Oh, by far, by far. This show has constantly gotten better every season, which is not something that you see. And yeah, you've got to keep Coulson around because what happens if at the end of Avenger 4, you reboot the universe, then Phil comes in a post-credit scene because Samuel Jackson doesn't want to keep running S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's how we bring back Coulson in the remade cinematic universe. We know that he's been alive, but that would justify it for the film stuff, and then he comes in and moves from the TV world back into film, I think would be the appropriate arc for him to do that. So I was looking at I just wanted to make a quick response in the chat. We were talking about writers. Someone brought up Inhumans. Let's not compare. Those were not the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. writers. Those were all brought in for Inhumans, and they knew nothing about what they were dealing with. Inhumans was a nightmare. I will stick by that. I know some people like it, and I'm glad that you did. But writing-wise, no, Inhumans was horrible. There is no comparison to what they have done with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Let's see. Before we leave Phil, and yeah, I think you're right. When we talk about, while Mac might be the heart of the team, the heart of the moral center of the team. Coulson is the heart of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that's why he has to stick around. He is the one that understands their mission, believes in it, and is willing to sacrifice and do whatever needs done to be the S.H.I.E.L.D., to protect the people. And I think that's why he has to stick around, and we can't lose him. Before we move on, I was asking in the chat before when I had put out my announcement video here to throw out some ideas of things we wanted to discuss. One of our viewers, Trend Pimp One, who I've been waiting to show up in the chat because I didn't necessarily want to bring up his theory before he showed up, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it. And I wanted to bring this up as one of the theories of what's going on with Phil. And I'm just going to read this right from his comments because I don't think that I can improve this in any matter. Phil's deal with Ghost Rider was either go get pie right now or you're a dead man. It's the infamous pie or die clause. So the team goes to get pie at the diner. Remember, that's exactly what Phil wanted to do. Let's go to the diner. We get pie. But they never got their pie. They were transported into the future. And so now he is slowly dying. The lesson being, of course, that pie is life. So now, with the team returning to the present day, they're going to find out that pie has been banned, and the only bakery left is owned by Graviton. What do you think?
That is a very plausible theory. Listen, when you think about this, right? Yes, you're absolutely correct. They did go to the diner and said, "We're going to have pie." Phil Coulson looked at the menu quickly, glanced over the menu, and said, "Pie." And unfortunately, they were interrupted by Enoch and his group. And as we can see, Coulson does seem to be affected by the spreading of this viral infection. And it was mentioned about the deal with Ghost Rider. Remember, Coulson himself brought up that he would still have to deal with the consequences of his deal with Ghost Rider. And Gravitonium being brought back into the forefront, I do think signals that this whole pie thing, and especially, remember, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are on the run. It may well be that they asked the waitress, what were these men and women ordering when they were at your counter? And she tells them, pie.
And when you're on the run, you don't have time for pie. That's why things only get worse.
But think about it. Remember, just before this, they had came out of the framework. So they may not have been aware that pie was illegal, right? So if they were not aware that pie was illegal at the time they ordered, they ask for pie. This is a trigger word. The waitress calls for the authorities to come have them picked up. But before the actual authorities get there, Enoch intercepts. But unwittingly, he sets things in motion that could possibly cause Phil Coulson his life. And the only way now is to go to an underground bake shop that is run by a man who hates S.H.I.E.L.D. and specifically Phil Coulson. Poetic.
All right, so that's how we have the return of the Superior. He is actually running the last bake shop, and that's how we get the whole LMD return storyline. See, it all ties in together. It all ties in together. All right, so speaking of the Superior, that is one of the things that is one of my predictions that I have with S.H.I.E.L.D. We've had sort of a few, I've chatted a few people back and forth on some of the ideas of what we expect to see. Some people have thought up, is S.H.I.E.L.D. just as a Hydra agent? Is that why her response to shooting the other two people for not doing success, is that just the same regular Hydra thing? I've thought for a while that she might be an LMD, that she might be one of the superiors people, because when she did get that information when she did find out about Robin, her first response was something about secrets. Maybe she can find out secrets which she might be useful to us. So, and we still have the superior out there. We still have the LMD stuff hasn't wrapped up, because of course that's LMD Daisy is who shot Talbot. And that's something that they're going to have to deal with when they come back. So I've been kind of thinking, is that going to be her case? Now, Dove Cameron, of course, is popping up into the show, who I'm not totally familiar with. I know she's a big Disney star, has been in a couple of things. People like her. Seems fine, a singer. She's supposed to come in playing Ruby, who is Hale's daughter. Now, that could be another LMD, or this could be one of those Hydra things. We saw her briefly in costume in some of the preview stuff. Looks pretty badass. And she's supposed to have an obsession with Daisy Johnson, who's Inhuman, who is something the Superior is after. So to me, the idea of the Superior being connected in some LMDs seems to fit a lot of the expectations we have going forward. On the extreme end of that, some people have brought up whether or not she might be a Skrull. Now, Skrulls can shape change. At least Super Skrull can. There is the long Kree-Skrull war that this might connect to and bring up. So it's possible. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does tend to lay out a lot of baselines sometimes the movies will then later on pick up or deal with. But that's also one of the doubts where I have to think that they might involve Skrulls at this point, because we do know that Captain Marvel, which is coming out next year, deals with a lot of Skrulls. And, you know, them invading Earth and taking over people's bodies and things like that. So I'm not sure if they would want to spoil that idea before the film, if they want to really put those points in with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then so the AOS fans see Captain Marvel and go, yeah, Skrulls, yeah, we knew that they were going to be here. Or would that force them to answer a lot of questions they may not yet be ready to deal with? Because Captain Marvel takes place back in the 90s. So if we had the Skrull here now, that would that might spoil some of the storyline that they have going on. On the other hand, that also might explain the lighthouse a little bit, because Enoch said that he didn't know who built the lighthouse or how big it was or what its purpose was for. And it doesn't seem like that's something that they're going to leave out there, which may mean instead of Skrulls, maybe these are Kree that have inhabited Earth and they're waiting for Cassius' father to show up. And so they're trying to lay the groundwork and they want to stop the agents before they can do something to stop the Kree. So I'm kind of curious how they're going to label it. I doubt that it would Skrull. I feel like it's much more likely if she is connected with the LMD Superior or something with, you know, Kree scouts being sent in ahead of time to sort of establish a particular world. And that would make sense then why they knew about the lighthouse and why the humans went there and why the Kree then showed up and made the deal with the humans to keep them alive in post-fractured Earth. I don't know. What do you think with that idea of Hale? Where do you think Hale's basically, what is her story? Where do you think that's going to lay things out? And especially connecting with all these other kind of ideas we have that we've got to tie up or at least connect to this season.
I mean, well, it would definitely be interesting if Hale turned out to be a Skrull. I mean, because if you think about it, right? Yeah, they're not going to have the Skrulls just in the movies and not have them on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. Right. So the thing that I think that could be interesting is if somehow Hale, I guess, is aware like, she's a Skrull. She is aware of the coming of the Kree Skrull War, and part of the reason why she is hunting Robin uh, is because she doesn't want the humans to possibly be prepared for secret invasion or whatever may have you, which could tie into Avengers 4. Now, while we might not get a full reveal like, hey, I am of the Skrull Empire, it could be a thing where, okay, one of the very last scenes of this particular season is General Hale dying and turning into, reverting back to Skrull form, and that's where the cliffhanger leaves. So it's like, oh, what the hell is this? And then, you got to think about it. It's going to be months before Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comes back. It wouldn't be until like what, September or October. So you would have time to uh build up this mystery where people are trying to figure out where the agents are trying to figure out, well, what was General Hale? She wasn't a Kree because we all know Kree are blue. What was that? And then, you could build into uh if Avengers Part 4 happens to be Secret Invasion or some variation of Secret Invasion or something going into Captain Marvel specifically, because Captain Marvel, I do believe, comes out either later this year or sometime next year.
Yeah, it's February. It's before Avengers 4 come out. So we've got Avengers
Okay.
3, we got Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, then Captain Marvel, and then Avengers 4.
Okay, so think about that then, right? So if you have the end of this season end off with the whole thing about the reveal of the Skrulls, but it's not a reveal in the sense of, oh, we're naming the Skrulls.
Right.
You can have the next season be, oh, Phil Coulson flashing back to Phil and May, because remember, the two of them have probably been agents since the 80s or 90s, right? And it could be a thing where they've heard of the stories of Captain Marvel. Nick Fury may have told them about the whole thing with the Skrulls, but never giving a name to what the Skrulls were or whatever may have you, or possibly bringing back the little black box. Because we haven't seen the black box in a while.
Right.
So I mean, there are many ways that if she happens to be a Skrull, where they don't have to do a major reveal before Captain Marvel, but also at the same point, it could be an Easter egg for the people who actually are fans of the comic books and would be in the know, like, oh, that is a Skrull. But then again, would you want the internet? I mean, well, you know what? You do want the internet going crazy. You do want the internet going crazy because I think that, unfortunately, because of the first half of season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., for some reason it didn't get the jump start that it should have, and hasn't, for whatever reason, it hasn't gained in popularity as it probably should have. Robert Downey Jr. has said that he would love to guest star on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I do believe a couple of other people that said they would like to guest star on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I'm just saying it would be. I wish that that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did have the promotional resources to put it in the place where I think it should be, in order to uh, to get a proper reflection of the quality that the show is. And again, I think this would be an awesome tie-in to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because they haven't done tie-ins in a while. They've stepped away from doing tie-ins, direct tie-ins to the movies as they did in the first couple of seasons. So I think this would be a great way for them to tie uh into a movie for the first time in a long time. And I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited. There's so many things I want. I wish someone at ABC would watch this video and listen to people who are supporters who champion this phenomenal work of fiction.
No, I agree. They needed a tie-in. There hasn't been one. I think the Winter Soldier tie-in was obviously the best because it really shaped Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But I also think that connection hampered the first half of the season, because they kind of had to tread water and couldn't really get into any of the real meaty stuff because of what was going to end up happening in Winter Soldier with the reveal of Hydra and everything. So you couldn't have that standard villain entity that S.H.I.E.L.D. is so normally up against. So I think in some ways that tie-in, while it was the best and I think had the largest impact of the show, in some ways might have been the reason why that first half of the season was a little unsteady, because they had to sort of tread water and establish a world and establish an organization, knowing, because just the way the shooting schedules go, knowing at some point that was all going to fall apart. However, how they worked that tie-in, and once they hit that second half of season one and really led up to Winter Soldier, and then the fallout afterwards, I think was great. And that was one thing that I really enjoyed, is because Winter Soldier came in, what was it, March? They had a whole chunk of episodes to deal with the fallouts, as opposed to they've had with the last few May movies, is they only have like 3 episodes, a handful of episodes to deal with after the movie. So it's I think in some ways hard to have that same impact in with the storyline that they have to develop over the rest of the season. But that does sort of bring into my question about Infinity War, because that's going to be such a huge thing. And we do have the Infinity Stones that can warp and change reality. I know there's been a lot of questions, a lot of back and forth about the time loop that the team is caught in and how can they fix it, and therefore they must be trapped in it, and the whole thing about that Phil. And to be honest, I was a little upset that Yo-Yo didn't give much more, or old Yo-Yo didn't give much more information to younger Yo-Yo. But I know they've got to kind of keep an air of mystery. But I am wondering if perhaps it is Thanos in the Infinity War that ends up breaking the time loop, that the team gets caught in whatever they're dealing with, and it's not until Thanos comes and starts warping actual reality around them that will break them out of this potential loop, because they do have such a chance to tie into a film, and they've increased the stakes so much. I mean, you're going to have a Kree invasion. Why aren't the Avengers called? That's exactly what the Avengers are for. Aliens from space showing up to attack Earth. That should be something the Avengers are set up for, and yet they're never part of the stories that we have of the past. It's just the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So are we saying that this future occurred with the Avengers not in the picture, and thus was it because Thanos pulled them out, and therefore of that warping, is that what created a sort of bubble universe that's separate from the whole rest of the Avengers, and that when they go back and Thanos shows up, that will kick them back into a regular timeline? Because if I do my count right, if we do pretty much a straight run through, this should end, the show should end about the 3rd week of May. Now, May 4th, that Friday, that's when Avengers comes out. Probably not have an episode that night. so they can tie into that movie if they do have any ramifications. And that would give, again, by my count, like 3 episodes in order to sort of tie things up. So I'm wondering if that's how they're going to use Infinity Wars, is they're kind of like trapped until that occurs, and that kicks them out, and that's going to be their ability to sort of wrap things up. I think it would be an interesting way to tie back into film, and then you could have those couple episodes that cleans everything up, and then do a final reveal of Hale or someone else as a potential Skrull or alien or something that will then lead into next season, which you might deal with the background of that before Captain Marvel. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for an Infinity War tie-in, that might be the reason that they pulled out. But if Downey or anyone else wants to show up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think we would all be about that. I think we would all chip in a couple of dollars towards his paycheck just to finally get that tie-in done.
Yeah, I'd chip in a few dollars for that one, if that's what it called for. But if you remember, there was something that Deke talked about, and that was the multiverse theory. Now, you talked about why would it be that the Kree would invade and that the Avengers would not be there. Well, imagine if you will, because, there are theories about time travel. And one theory about time travel basically is if you were to go forward in time, well, no, not if you went forward in time, but once you go back in time, you are no longer in the same reality anymore. So there could possibly be a scenario where when the agents have gone back, the reality that they are in, there was never an Avengers. And while that would be kind of a sad state of affairs, because that would kind of change the status quo as it being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that could be a very interesting and possibly exciting way to go about things, because they wouldn't be tethered to the MCU in a way that people are saying, oh, well, when is the next movie tie-in going to be? Because pretty much, with Kevin Feige, him being at odds with Ike Perlmutter for all these years, it essentially seems that unfortunately, we as the fans have been made to suffer the fact that these two have butted heads for all this time. And the things that fans have been clamoring for, such as something that happens on the show being referenced in one of the movies, where it's like, yeah, there are things that happen in the movies where it kind of gets retconned into the TV show, and it gets re-retconned as if it was something that was, kind of a cause and effect thing, such as in Winter Soldier, when Nick Fury has that laser that cuts him out of the bottom of his SUV and cuts through the ground. Later on, like maybe an episode or two later in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Fitz refers to it as like a mouse hole or something like that, and it made it seem as though Fitz was the guy who came up with the technology that ended up in the Winter Soldier, even though there was never any reference to Leopold Fitz. Or in Age of Ultron, where the agents go and they're like, oh yeah, we got to dust off the old helicarrier. And then in Age of Ultron, Nick Fury shows up and is like, oh, I called in a favor from an old friend. It's one of those things where it's kind of like, okay, we see what you did there. But, like for anyone who doesn't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's not a thing where they're going to be sitting there like, oh wow, he got that from Phil Coulson. Like if they don't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then they would never know. So I just wish for once, just one time, that there is something that happens on the show that doesn't have to be kind of triple retconned, to be like, oh, I watched the show, they referenced this thing in the movie, and they referenced it in the show, so this is their tie-in. I want it to be a true, authentic crossover, and not just be a thing where it happens in the $100 million movie, and so for the couple $1 million TV show, we'll sprinkle it in there and make it seem as though it's part of the same package. A man can dream.
No, I'm with you. In fact, honestly, the mouse hole was one of my favorite parts of that season, just because, I mean, I understand the films have to sort of exist with people assuming that you don't watch the show, that they've got to be able to exist on their own so people can watch them, and everything is within that own little breadbasket. And that those of us that, kind of like the comics, if you read multiple comics, you can see where that tie-in, when they reference, when the little thing says, look back at Fantastic Four 114, that was sort of the reference for. So, I mean, in a way, I get it. That was one of my favorite bits, especially when they had thrown out the line of like, yeah, sometimes the big wigs take this up and they don't let it go off to everyone else, which is why Fitz never saw it anywhere else. It never appeared on any other agents, but it just that Fury had it because he saw that, was like, great, I'm going to hold on to this as my little like emergency getaway. I don't want anyone else knowing about this. So I kind of love that idea. And yeah, even the helicarrier thing in that sense port, that was something that for us who watch the rest of the shows can kind of dive into and appreciate. So yeah, I would like a more direct tie-in, which I think they could even do with post-credit scenes and stuff like that. I get, the reality of this, that you have films that take a year or 2 years from writing to producing and filming and then finishing and all the special effects before it comes out. So trying to tie in a show which moves at a much faster pace, and with that, I can see that there are difficulties. But on the other hand, because films have such a huge amount of prep time and development time, then I think it's really easy, much like they did with Winter Soldier, to look ahead and go, okay, you want to be here? Well, we can get to that point at that point too. We'll figure out our timing so we can link to that. And then you can use that moment, because we know that anybody watches the series is going to watch the movies. So if you take something that jumps from the series to the movie and then comes back, it can exist all by itself in the film. But we as viewers of the show, who are definitely going to see all of these mediums, I think would serve more, and I think it would be a bigger payoff and would even draw more people into watching the series if they can see that the promise of it's all connected actually starts to play out. And that's one of the things that I think has been most disappointing, and because we've had this promise of everything connected, and we want to see it more than just a line of, I guess it's time to call the Avengers, or a little chevron reading at the bottom of a news program that you're seeing on S.H.I.E.L.D. that mentions some disturbance, in Hell's Kitchen, so we can get a Daredevil tie-in. I think it would be more fun if they actually worked those ideas a little more congruently. Let's see. I'm trying to look at some of the questions in the chat. Somebody was bringing up with the Superior. Could that be MODOK? That would be cool. And I think they can use MODOK. I was wondering if rights-wise, if that was still with Fox, And yes, I know with a purchase and everything, but those things haven't all meshed around together yet. So if that belongs to Fox, no, they couldn't use it yet. But because MODOK's usually attempted to connect it with AIM, and AIM is definitely in the MCU, as we know from Iron Man 3, that should be possible. Not sure if they would use MODOK for now, or if that might be someone that they'd save up for the big screen. I don't know about that. A few questions about would Robert Downey Jr.'s cameo take up all of the money, all of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s budget? Maybe. I know Fury was kind of expensive there, but somebody else said, yeah, Clay Portis. Yeah, maybe Downey could do Marvelous Solid. After all, they brought him from T-list to major star. That's true. That's true. You know, that would be nice of them. I would love for them to try and make a bit more of a connection for that. Let's see. Thor, Iron Man. Anyway, you guys are asking some great questions. I don't want to get so caught up in chatting that I miss some of the things that you're talking about in here. Oh, do we think Ruby would have superpowers? Dove Cameron's character. Possibly. I mean, it's hard to say unless we know a little bit more about her. She could just be a tech person with all sorts of S.H.I.E.L.D. and army tech going after the team. Again, possible. We don't know anything about her as a character. We know very little about General Hale, so I'm not sure where they would be coming from. Let's see, anything else? Anyway, if you guys in chat, if you've got any more questions, throw them up. I know we're like an hour and 45 minutes now, so we're probably going to start wrapping things up pretty soon. So yes, I'm trying to watch the chat. If you guys do have any questions, please throw them in. Let's see. Well, Don, did you have any other expectations of things that you want to see or tie in, or where they think? The only other thing that I wanted to sort of jump in is, I know Quake, the Destroyer of Worlds, has been blamed for the destruction of Earth. I really do think Graviton's coming back. I think the Gravitonium brought up in the first part of the season was a complete Easter egg. I think this is a way to bring back that floating character that was never really dealt with that way from way back in season 1. And honestly, this might end up being what destroys the world. I wonder if Daisy goes down, leaves the plane in that one video clip that we saw to try and stop Graviton. And Graviton is, you know, because of her Quake powers, of her ability to work motion, was she being brought in to try and contain him. But she's not strong enough and he blows up, and that is why there is so much gravitonium floating around Earth, which is why there was still an atmosphere. I love that they gave that explanation. Why was there still an atmosphere on a planet that's just a basic shell? It's gravitonium. Where does the gravitonium come from? Really, that has to be Graviton. And if that's the case, is it a conflict between Quake and Graviton that ends up shaking the planet apart?
I mean, that would be very interesting and very plausible because, you know, again, why after 4 seasons would you suddenly bring back Graviton? Because, you know, we never even got to see Franklin Hall really as Graviton. We saw him fall into the Gravitonium well. We never saw him come back out. And we heard about him getting released. You know, like there was kind of that little small, you know, I don't even know if you would call it an Easter egg or not. But when Ward and oh man, what the hell was his
Garrett.
name?
When Ward and Garrett went to break everybody out of the jail, yeah, they did find Graviton there in the lowest levels there and referred to it, but yeah, we never really saw anything after that.
Right. You know, so you know, again, I think that, you know, this could be the AOS team tying up certain loose story threads, because I'm pretty sure they've gotten asked the question, hey, are we going to see Graviton again? I mean, we're hearing about Absorbing Man. We never got to see him after what happened with his dealings with not the obelisk, but it was a piece of one of the Kree shards that turn you into an Inhuman.
Yeah, the Diviner.
Yes,
I think was what they referred to it as.
Yes. Yeah, I was like, well, it's not an obelisk. Yeah, so he touched the Diviner. He was able to absorb and control that. With his dealings with Bakshi, and then after that, we didn't see him anymore. It was like, this dude looks like he was ripped off the damn page. Why are we not getting to see more of Absorbing Man? So that could be another loose thread that was never fully tied up. And then we got Hunter, we got Lance Hunter earlier this season. It appears that it's going to be a while before the Orville returns. So, could we possibly get Hunter and Bobby, back again as Mockingbird, and oh man, I mean, like, we never got to see Mockingbird with any powers. I don't think we're actually going to see Mockingbird with any powers, but still, I mean, if you're going to do a 100th episode and it seems like they're preparing to go all out, Absorbing Man, Graviton, possibly, I mean, well, they had Ward, so you may not need Ward, but I mean, it's Ward. How do you not have Ward? You bring back Lance and Bobby. Oh man, I'm trying to think, is there any other person that they could bring back that hasn't been there? I mean, because as much as I would love for them to bring Sam Jackson back, it seems that Sam Jackson is going to be relegated to not necessarily a bit part, but I think he's only got 2 movies left on his contract. One of them is Captain Marvel, and I think the other one is probably going to be Avengers 4. Now, I mean, listen, he did 2 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which when I saw that, it was mind-blowing that he was there at all. I'm like, holy shit, they actually got him on here. Maybe Maria Hill, because I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, after How I Met Your Mother went off the air, I was like, okay, Kobe Smulders is free now. Hello, Maria Hill, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Anybody? Yeah. So that would be interesting, but who knows? I mean, like, they obviously are going to have something big planned for us, and it's got to be bigger than just Absorbing Man and maybe Graviton. It's got to be bigger than that. So I don't know. I can't wait to see what they do. I am pumped. I don't think I've been pumped as much. Yeah, I don't think I've been pumped for anything like this since I've seen the Avengers Infinity War trailer, which is probably one of the best trailers I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh yeah, that's just gets you pumped and ready to go. All right, let's see. Yeah, we've got the big 100 coming up. Let's see a few questions there in the chat. Honestly, yeah, I think that's when we get the Fitzsimmons wedding. I think they're going to get back to Earth. They're going to be like, look, we don't know what's happening next. 100, find out what's happening with Phil. They see that life is short, and that's when we get a Fitzsimmons wedding. That's my guess. Deathlock. People want to see Deathlock. I would love for Deathlock to come back. I'm not sure. Again, it's one of those possibilities. It's out there in the world. The character still exists. The character hasn't been sidelined or anything. So that would be a great thing to bring back, especially with the team kind of in their hunted position. Bobby and Hunter, I want back so bad. I really was upset. I had mentioned this to you, Don, when we were talking a couple weeks ago. That parting shot, I hated that episode. I really hated them losing those characters. I thought it was a dumb way to do it. I didn't agree with any of it. And I would really love to have them back. Adrian Palicki on Orville, she's great, but you're right. They're taking a break. Very easy time to come back in and bring her character back. Hunter does seem to allude to getting Bobby and using them to watch over Robin, and we didn't see either of them in the flashback sequences, so they could be coming back for the fight. And if the team is on the run, technically they were talking about Bobby and Hunter kind of being on the run. That's the idea for Most Wanted was, but they're definitely out there floating around, so they might be some great resources to connect in with. Let me see. Someone else. Trip. Would love to have Trip back. Really miss Trip. Ward, on the other hand, I think they wrapped Ward up just fine. I think they gave him a great arc over those first few seasons. Ending him with Hive was great. And I love that they brought him back for the framework to see what alternate Ward would have looked like. But I'm fine with him not coming back. I think they exhausted that character really well. I think if they did try to bring him back, it would feel rehashed. I don't think that it would have that same kind of effect. That was a great thing about him showing up in the framework, just in that whole different point. But then I was good with that. So let's see. No, they better not kill Fitz. They're not setting up a death of Fitz. Fitz is awesome. He's a well-rounded character. Him and Gemma have been around. We cannot allow this curse. If there's one relationship that exists and is allowed to exist in S.H.I.E.L.D., it's Fitzsimmons. Also, Ian DeCastecker is a freaking brilliant actor. He is the acting heavyweight of the show, as far as I'm concerned. If they lose him, it would be a massive loss, I think, for what they can do with the show. And I really love him playing with his dark side, trying to deal with that. And let's not forget, Gemma has a bit of a dark side herself. We thought that Fitz decapitating the Kree there in order to get away might, shine negatively on Gemma. But it was Gemma's idea for Flint to throw all the rocks in through the window and suck the Kree out into space. So, I think she's got a little bit of a dark side. I think they'll find out coming there. The ferrets. Oh, yeah. Release the ferrets. We need more ferrets. The ferrets definitely have to return. Let's see. The body weddings. I love CW. This is not the CW. No, this is not. The writing is so much better than the CW. And again, no cattiness between characters. Everybody deals with everyone else like they're adults and they're friends and they're working together. We don't have cattiness and backstabbing between any of the characters. And that's one of the great strengths of this show. Hydra. Will we get another Hydra uprising? Maybe. I mean, I like Hydra as a villain for S.H.I.E.L.D. They are the perfect, antithesis to them. But they also, I think, worked Hydra pretty well. I think they worked their arc nicely, especially bringing up Hive and kind of finishing that out. I loved them when they brought up Powers Booth, because that was a great Avengers tie-in that wasn't direct, but we all know that was Powers Booth's voice as one of the directors in Avengers there. So I thought that was a wonderful way of connecting that. But I don't know, unless they find a really good reason to bring Hydra back, there is so much more. We could have AIM reestablishing coming against S.H.I.E.L.D. I think that would be great. And they imply, that existed in the film. So I think that would be a great villain group to bring back. Let's see. All right. right. Well, I think we're probably wrapping things up. Is there anything else that you want to add, Don, or any other thoughts or expectations for the rest of the season before we wrap things up here?
I hope that the whole multiverse theory line from Deke was just a line, because, you know, as we talked about right before we went on, I was thinking about there's a possibility that they could use the Infinity Gauntlet, this whole Infinity War, to possibly break up the MCU into multiple tiers where each medium is its own separate universe, in which that would make it that they are not actually connected anymore. And that, to me, I think would be an absolute tragedy. But I do think that we have to accept that it is a possibility. So I'm you know, I'm prepared for the worst, but I'm hoping for the best when it comes to that. And I just want Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to keep on with the track that it's on right now. Bring back Ghost Rider. We need Ghost Rider, obviously. Don't kill off Phil Coulson. Bring back Deathlock. Bring back the Most Wanted. You know, if you can, make them agents again. I mean, because, you know, like from what the preview showed, S.H.I.E.L.D. is back to being disbanded again. I'm like, Dad, how many times are you going to get rid of S.H.I.E.L.D. and make them a non-government entity? Like this is like, what, the third time already? It's like, oh, no, S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, you have your license. You have your government stamp today. Oh, wait. Is there an accounting error? Pulled. So I'm just like, man, yeah. The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are just going to, you know, I don't even know what to call it anymore, because it's just, man, I'll be honest with you. When the reveal of Hydra happened in Captain America, Winter Soldier, I remember sitting in the movie theater when the moment happened and thought to myself, wait, they just started Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this season. Are they already canceling it? And luckily, though, here we are 4 seasons later. So, yeah, man. I'm not sure what to say other than I just hope it continues on its phenomenal run, and we got to do this at the end of the season. You know.
Happily, I will happily do that. And yes, let's all remember that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the top-rated Marvel show. It's like 96% rating. Last season, season 4, was a perfect rating, 100%. So yes, this is by far the best Marvel show, even by ratings. Certainly by watched, while the Netflix shows can do some amazing, cool, and kind of darker things. I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the hub of the MCU. It's what everything can connect to. It can reflect back to everything else. So I completely agree. I think this is going to go down as one of the best, if not the best, comic book TV series out there. I also agree. I would not want them to separate the universes. That's what's different from the DC universe. And DC universe deals with a lot of, you know, infinite Earths and crisis and multiverse and stuff. That's very much a DC world point, and I think that they have worked that well. I think with Marvel's, its ability to connect with stuff, even if it doesn't do it perfectly all the time, I think keeping that potential to overlay and reflect and react to what's going out, I think that's one of the strengths of the MCU and its design, and I certainly hope that they don't change that. Last couple of questions I just saw. I wanted to get to as fair to Shield. Do you think season 6 could be a springboard for another Shield related shows? It could be, but again, Most Wanted didn't work. They tried to do damage control, and that I don't think even got outside, even got a pilot shot for it. And then DC did their show Unpowered, which was kind of like it, and that didn't do well. So they could. I think Ghost Rider would be a great spinoff. It's certainly effects heavy, but they've done a lot of stuff with Agents of Shield effects wise, especially this season. So it could be something that they pull off. But I want them to keep Shield around personally. I think there's still a lot more that they could do with that. Separate universe, Marvel X-Men in its own universe. It is right now. This might change after Avengers 4, and that may be what they do as the big change to sort of remake reality. You may even get a tagline of someone looking at a TV. It's like, okay, the world's back. And then someone saying, hey, what's a mutant? And boom. And then they just leave it like that. And that allows phase 4 to eventually integrate all of the X-Men characters if they choose to do that. I think that would be probably the most likely way. And it would be a great, at post credits, everybody in the theater would go nuts if somebody mentioned mutant. That would be all that they had to do. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a shoe-in for the Disney streaming service. Maybe from right here right now, the streaming service is planning to do mostly family-oriented stuff. All of their animation and things like that. They may not want to do the somewhat more adult fare that at least the last 2 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. have gone in. There certainly has been no plans to move the Netflix shows over to Disney streaming. So I think their first streaming service is going to be all mostly animation, real family-friendly fare. And then maybe they'll do a second spinoff. So I'm not even sure how much of the Marvel stuff we'll end up seeing on their main streaming service. We sort of have to kind of wait and see how they sort of plan all of that out. Just want to see if there's anything else. Bring back Hunter's friend who crashed the helicopter. No, he was useless. That's why he went down in the helicopter. All right. I think that's going to be it. I hope I answered. Hope we got to most of your questions. I'm sure we didn't hit everything, but we're able to talk a lot. So thank you, everybody, for coming and watching this live stream. Thank you, Don, so much for being here. First time I've done a streaming service, and outside of a moment of sound technical issues, I think it went off pretty well. Would love to do this some more. I actually like the interaction that we have with the chat. I really was enjoying doing that. So maybe we'll have that a little bit more focused next time. So Don, thank you so much for joining me and chatting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Really was looking forward to this and was such a blast. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to talk about, promote, plug, do your thing?
All right. Well, first off, Darren, thank you for having me. I don't often get to talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So when I do with someone who is as much of a fan of the show as I am, it is a treat. Shout out to everyone in the chat room who came and watched us tonight. Hail Hydra, as always, and Wakanda forever. And as far as me, you can catch me on my channel, Don of Ice and Fire. And tomorrow I will be doing my normal thing, which is Ice and Fire Opinions, where I do a topic related to Game of Thrones. You know what? I'm not even sure what the topic is for tomorrow. Either it's going to be a character or something. Not sure yet. I also have another channel called Don Entertainment, where I very infrequently do reviews about stuff. So, you know what? Saturday, I will have a review posted for the Black Panther, because I think I want to go see that one more time before I actually do a review on it. Yeah, so thank you again for having me, Darren, and to the rest out there, rate, comment, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and come back for more. That has been my time, and my name is Don WIlli, and I'm saying peace. Darren, you're still on mute.
Okay, small technical errors there. I've got to press these buttons. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again on this stream. Just looking forward on two things I'm doing. Of course, this Sunday we have the return of The Walking Dead, back half of season 8. Could be very interesting. Reviews out, of course, right after that, usually about 2 or 3 in the morning whenever I get done with them. And then next Friday, we have the return of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. back on Earth. Super excited about that. And then looking forward, be doing Legion in April, and of course Westworld, both of those seasons too. Very excited about that. One other thing is I will be doing another live stream, not on my channel, but over on Enchantment of Eternity, Mark's channel, who I've done quite a few live streams with. We're going to be talking about top 25 space movies over the last decade or so. We'll have most of them on there. We've got to remove a few just because of timing and repeats and things like that. But yeah, top 25 ranking space films. That will be next Saturday, I believe, March 3rd, 4 o'clock Pacific time. I'll put out tweets and stuff and a little announcement so you guys can go ahead and catch that if you're interested. But that's it. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this, and Don, and I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.